What's up, everybody? This is John with Jumfair Innovations, bringing you more League of Legends Worlds 2021 content. We had an amazing day one. If you wanted to see my recap and how my predictions went, do make sure you check out the previous video. But in this one, we're going to be doing a bit of predictions for day two. So hyped for it, can't wait. But yeah, let's get into it. Again, same as last time, I'm just going to do them based on groups as opposed to order of the day. I think the first game of the day is actually, I think it is. Is it T1 EDG? I'm pretty sure it's T1 EDG. But firstly, we've got Darmon versus Rogue. We saw Rogue have a win yesterday, which was really important for them to getting out of the group. We saw Darmon have maybe one of, if not the most impressive performance of the day, given the fact it was against FPX and they stomped FPX. This one I think is going to be a really interesting game. Of course, this is probably going to come down to, can Hansama and Trimby take advantage of the weaknesses perceived in Darmon's bot lane with Ghost and Beryl, or will Darmon's jungle, top, and mid be way too strong? Because that feels like that is always the dynamic when you have a Darmon game. Can Darmon's top side and mid and jungle, obviously, can that overcome any possible deficits that we see from the bot lane? We saw in the game against FPX, for example, the bot lane didn't get a deficit. In fact, it actually got a minor lead. And we saw how much Darmon just won, how easy it is for Darmon to win when their bot lane, goes even or goes slightly ahead. So this is how strong Showmaker, Canyon, and Kana are. And, we saw last year's meta really suit, AFK jungling. I do expect a priority on Ziggs moving forward. I did say that I thought they would pick Ziggs. Ziggs was open, but they obviously really wanted to go with the Yuumi Misfortune, which seems really, really strong. Yuumi seems like a very strong support in this meta. I'm going to go with Darmon on this one. I just don't think Rogue have the firepower it takes to take down Darmon. We saw anytime Darmon has had issues, or teams have taken games off them, or teams have really pushed them, we saw teams have to play at an exceptional level. We saw Mad play the best of 5 they have ever played in their lives, and they still lost that series 3-2. So you think of the high level that it takes, like the skill check to take on Darmon, and I just don't think Rogue has that level of firepower. I think Showmaker is going to be far too strong for Larson. I think Larson's champion pool and the way he plays mid can be very predictable, and someone of Showmaker's caliber can really exploit that. A strong point for Rogue is, I think, going to be a mismatch, and that's another problem, is that I think Inspired, as great as he is definitely the best jungler in the LEC, I think it's still a huge mismatch when you go against Canyon. Canyon is the best jungler in the world. He took on TN, who, people rate really highly. He's a former world's champion. Former world's finalist MVP. And, Canyon, he jungle gapped him. He Canyon gapped him. And it's just, I see it going the exact same way. And I think, we saw Khan have a really strong game against Nuguri, and, I expect that a lot to be the same again. I expect them to be able to get Ghost on a safe ADC, maybe Ziggs, maybe a Jhin, for example, and be able to AFK farm and allow Beryl to roam and terrorize the map like we saw against FPX. Next, we're going to have FPX versus C9. I think this one is going to be... I can see this one getting really, really ugly for NA fans. Nuguri, I think the the strongest point and the biggest highlight you can take away from C9 is their play is the play of Fudge, and maybe to an extent Perks. I think Perks has underperformed a little bit, but you know, these two definitely have been the better performance of C9. But then you look at who they're facing. You've got Fudge taking on Nuggery, and then you've got Perks taking on the super carry Doinby. And while FPX and FPX fans might not have liked what they saw from game against Darmon, I don't think C9 has the map control that a Darmon has. Darmon were able to really, really nullify a lot of what FPX wanted to do by great vision control. I don't think C9 has that same sort of vision control game as Darmon. Darmon's, I think, is one of the best in the world. So I expect FPX to be able to get away with a lot more roams. And obviously we know that when the super carry roams, you know, good things happen for FPX fans. They won a championship of Doinby roaming. So I expect it to be FPX favored. I expect it to be very comfortable. I also expect LWX and Chris to really punish Vulcan and Sven, as they have been probably the worst performing players on C9. Next, we have the hypest game of the day. We have T1 versus EDG. This is going to be a really great game. What stories we have? We have Scout, former T1 understudy, taking on, of course, the King himself. The King is back, Faker, the unkillable Demon King. That's hype. You've got, of course, the story of, you know, EDG being the team that defeated SKT in MSI. That was the first finals and first international best of 5 that T1 ever lost. And of course, it was the, you know, the famous Morgana counter into Faker's LeBlanc that had been undefeated at that point. You also have, of course, you know, if we're talking about, you know, SKT, T1, and EDG, we have to talk about the shockwave heard around the world. You know, we all have seen it. We've all watched it a million times. We've all heard, and we've all said it ourselves in a game when we've seen like really cool Orianna Shockwave. You know, we've done the Captain Flowers, you know, caster call, you know, Faker Shockwave, we'll find them all. You know, we've all done that. Like, so this is the history that these two teams have, and they're two historic organizations from their regions, and they have historic rivalry with one another. So this is going to be hype. Now, we saw a really dominant performance by T1. We saw a very calculated, controlled win by EDG. This one I'm going to give to EDG. As much as, you know, we want to see Faker do well, we want to see T1, you know, go really far in this tournament. I just think EDG plays a style of League of Legends that is very hard for T1 to take advantage of. They, in many ways, they play very similarly. And so I just think that, you know, it's coming down to a bit of skill check. And I honestly think that, you know, Viper is the best ADC on the planet. I think at this point in his career, Scout is better than Faker. However, like, that's not me saying I think Scout, you know, is better than Faker of all, you know, historically. Faker is the GOAT. Faker is the greatest of all time. I just think at Faker's point in his career now, as he's winding down, while Scout seems to be in his prime, it just, to me, it seems like Scout I would give the advantage to over Faker at this point. But, you know, he is the unkillable Demon King for a reason. But yeah, Kana versus Flandre, I think they have very similar champion pools, so it comes down to, you know, who do you think is stronger? And of course, we have JJ versus Ona. I see the reason why I give this one to EDG as well is that, firstly, we don't know if T1's going to experiment and have Teddy in there instead of Gumayushi. we also don't know what these players who have never been to Worlds before, like Ona, like Kana, like Gumayushi, they haven't been to Worlds before, and they haven't been in a match this hype before, with this much pressure and this much implications for moving forward into the quarterfinal stage. And so you have to wonder how they will perform in something so intense. And that's why I give it to EDG, because Viper, Scout, these players have been there before. And EDG, of course, won the LPL, so they've shown that they can perform at a very high level in very high stake situations. While we saw T1, they lost to Darmon, and fairly comfortably, all things considered. So moving on now, we of course have 100 Thieves versus Detonation Focus Me. I'm going to give this one to Detonation Focus Me. Maybe I am a fanboy of Aria. I like the way Detonation Focus Me play, and I think they've shown against teams like C9, for example, that they aren't necessarily just a pushover. I also can see a world where 100 Thieves, kind of play a very slow game, like what we saw with EDG. And I honestly, Abadage is really good, but I think Aria is better. Maybe that's just fanboy bias, but I just see Aria being able to really leverage a great lead in mid, and then transition that into the other lanes, which along with Evi as well. I think Evi matches up really well with Someday as well. So I can see them being able to gain leads and be able to transition that then into the other lanes and snowball from there. Kind of similar to what we saw Harmor Life do a lot in the play-ins. 100 Thieves, though, should be favored to wins. Obviously, I'm picking the upset here. I don't know, something in my gut tells me Detonation Focus Me is going to win. Next up, we have Harmor Life versus PSG. PSG had a very disappointing performance, you'd have to say. You would have hoped to have seen more from them. The PCS continues to have a very underwhelming world so far. Beyond Gaming obviously didn't perform half as well as we expected to. PSG had a very lackluster game against RNG, despite being able to eventually drag out the game, win a team fight. They still lost fairly comfortably, all things considered. Harmor Life, on the other hand, continue to keep rising in power levels. And of course, we saw a bit of Church of Chovy, and that is something that if you're a PSG fan, you are most afraid of, because I think the one shining light for PSG yesterday was Maple in the mid lane. And, if we get, Chovy at peak form, as great as Maple is, Chovy, I expect to stomp that lane. And that's not a knock on Maple. That's just talking about the greatness of Chovy. Chovy, when his career is finished, we will talk about Chovy as possibly the greatest laner to ever play the game. We wouldn't obviously say he's the greatest mid laner or the greatest player, but we would certainly you could certainly make the argument when he's finished his career that he is the greatest laner that has ever played this game. No one plays lane as great as Chovy. And so I really expect Harmor Life to win this one. I think the things that Harmor Life do that sees them get punished by better teams like Darmon, like a team like EDG or an FPX or RNG. I don't see PSG, given the way what we've seen of PCS so far with both Beyond Gaming and PSG's game yesterday. I don't see them being able to punish it. I see Morgan being able to have strong lane against Hanabi, and I expect obviously Chovy to have really strong lane against Maple. This then also Deft has been playing he's been in really great form, and it's really great to see a legacy player like Deft be in such great form, and I expect that to continue. PSG, and it seems the PCS for that matter, because we saw this problem with Beyond Gaming as well. Their early games are very weak. They are able to stall out games and, make it a little bit interesting, but, the deficits seem like they're too much. And the problem we saw against Beyond Gaming, I think when Harmer Life took them on, and we saw Morgan and Chovy really get huge solo lane leads, I think is kind of a preview of what we will see when Harmer Life takes on PSG. Next up, we would have Fanatic versus Rogue. Fanatic versus RNG. I expect RNG to be too strong for Fnatic. I think Xiaohu is going to really pop off this game. Adam's performance, I like Adam. Adam's fun. He has lots of memes. He's a very funny guy. But obviously we're talking here about analysis, and we're talking about, of course, the gameplay. And the gameplay we saw him against Morgan really terrifies me when you're saying, okay, this guy, you're now going to face Xiaohu. And Xiaohu, to me, is the best top laner on the planet. And Morgan was able to really generate a lot of leads and really influence the map a lot more than Adam. So yeah, that's really scary, especially because Xiaohu's champion pool is nothing Adam has ever seen before. You cannot prepare for Xiaohu. You just have to try and mitigate the lane a little bit, or you have to be someone as talented as Nuggery, who is possibly the best top laner in his own right. So unless you're that sort of level of caliber of player like a Nuggery, you kind of have to try and mitigate the lane and be impactful in team fights moving forward. And I just don't think Adam is going to be allowed to play the game, and it's going to cause a huge diff. Moving on, we of course have Genji versus Mad. I think this one's probably the closest game of the day. As great as Genji made a performance yesterday, I still worry about them. And you have to worry about them if you're an LCK fan. I think they're a team that they know how to let you down if you're a fan, especially if you're from what I've seen of LCK, Genji, the more you get hyped for them, the more they let you down. And so, yesterday people got a bit hyped for them. I think at all levels, at all lanes, this is like a really, really close matchup. You've got Humanoid versus BDD. You've got Rascal versus Armut. Elioya versus Clid. I think the only place you could possibly say you think Genji has an advantage is Kazi and Kai'Sa. As great as they are, you're talking about Ruler and Life. And Ruler and Life are the best bot lane. I guess T1 fans would disagree, but I see Ruler and Life as the best bot lane in the LCK. And I think this is where Genji matches up stronger against Mad. I am going to put Mad though. I just feel like Genji, they won't punish Mad enough in the early game. We saw Team Liquid punish them, and we're able to snowball off that. And we'll see if that continues with Mad, because certainly Genji, I think, is a better team than Team Liquid. But again, I expect Genji to play a bit slow, which should allow Mad to get their footing a bit and play the game that they want to, and be able to team fight and make macro decisions to come back and win the game. I expect it to be a long game. Lastly, we have Team Liquid versus LNG. I expect LNG to win. I see Tarzan and Ale being far too strong for Team Liquid. Obviously, if you're an NA fan, this is a really important game because I think spoiler obviously for tomorrow, I really don't think Team Liquid can take a game off Genji, because I think Genji is just too clean for Team Liquid, and Team Liquid doesn't have enough variables like a Mad to be able to put them off their game and take that game off them. So I think this game is really important, because I think at times LNG can make a lot of unforced errors, and a team as disciplined as Team Liquid can really punish that. I think Alfari is not going to get gapped by Ale, which I think is really important for LNG. LNG really rely on Ale and Tarzan. So I think it's going to come down to, can Santorin keep up with Tarzan? If he does, then, this game is for anyone. But I honestly do expect Tarzan to have a really good performance, and I see LNG taking that game off Team Liquid. So that would leave our standings after day 2. That would put Darmon to 2-0. That would put RNG to 1-1. FPX would also move to 1-1. C9 would move to 0-2. For Group 2, we would see EDG move to 2-0. T1 would move to 1-1. Detonation Focus Me would also move to 1-1. And 100 Thieves would move to 0-2. Next, we would have RNG moving to 2-0. We would also see Harmer Life moving to 2-0, making their game tomorrow really, really interesting. PSG moving to 0-2, and Fanatic moving to 0-2, also making their game very, very interesting, because really you need to win that game. You need to get to 1-2 to make sure that you have a chance on the final day to at least try and get some tiebreakers. For Group D, that would put Genji to 1-1. That would put Team Liquid to 1-1. That would put LNG to 1-1. And that would put Mad Lions to 1-1. And that would make that group really, really interesting and really, really spicy moving forward. Well, there you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed that. What did you think of my predictions? Do you think do you agree with them? Do you disagree?